Hi, hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Today we will discuss John Milton's Paradise Lost, Book 9. Paradise Lost, Book 9, published in 1667. John Milton, 1608-1674. Book 9 of Paradise Lost marks the tragic climax of Milton's epic, The Fall of Man. Milton opens this book by announcing a solemn shift in tone from the lofty themes of celestial battles and a divine glory to the inward, more tragic drama of temptation and a disobedience. He invokes his muse, Urania, and he proclaims that his subject is no longer warlike, but a moral and a spiritual, a battle within the human soul. He asserts that the true hero is not the warrior, but the one who withstands temptation and remains faithful. Satan, having re-entered Eden at the nightfall, is tormented by envy at the bliss of Adam and Eve. His malice is intensified by their innocence and their joy, and he becomes fully committed to their ruin. With a cunning calculation, he selects the serpent, known for its beauty and subtlety, as the creature he will inhabit to carry out his plan. At dawn, he watches Adam and Eve preparing for the day, and he seizes the opportunity when they decide to separate briefly while walking in the garden. Eve suggests to Adam that they divide their labor and attend to the garden separately for efficiency. Adam, with a gentle caution, advises against it, reminding her of the threat posed by Satan and emphasizing the importance of mutual support. Yet Eve, confident in her strength and reason, insists on working alone to prove her capability. Adam reluctantly agrees, torn between reason and affection, unknowingly allowing the conditions for disaster to unfold. Once Eve is alone, Satan approaches in the guise of the serpent. He flatters her with exaggerated praise, catching her attention by speaking, an unnatural act for a beast. Curious, she listens as he tells her he gained speech and intelligence by eating the fruit from the tree of knowledge. Using deceptive logic and appealing to her vanity, ambition, and desire for wisdom, he argues that the tree's prohibition is meant to keep humans inferior to the gods. He subtly implies that eating the fruit would elevate her to divine status and that even God would admire such a boldness. Eve, torn between fear and desire, rationalizes the act to herself. She questions why the fruit should be forbidden if it offers such apparent benefit, and whether God's command was meant to be tested. Finally, giving in to temptation, she eats the fruit. And at that moment, she experiences a brief acceleration, a sense of awakening and empowerment, but this soon gives way to an uneasy transformation. Her innocence is lost, and a darker self-awareness takes its place. Returning to Adam, she shares her transgression and entices him to join her. Adam is struck with grief, instantly understanding the gravity of what has happened. Yet instead of refusing her, he chooses to fall with her out of love, despair, and a fear of separation. He eats the fruit not because he believes Satan, but because he cannot imagine life without Eve. In this moment, Milton portrays Adam's sin as conscious and tragic, a future not of knowledge but of will. Immediately after their shared disobedience, the harmony of Eden begins to unravel. Their perception is altered. They feel shame for the first time and seek to cover their nakedness with the fig leaves. Passion replaces purity, and they are consumed by lust and confusion. They realize they are changed, not exalted, but diminished, and their unity starts to crumble. As the effects of sin deepens, Adam and Eve's once blessed companionship turns bitter. They begin to argue and blame each other. Eve laments her independence. Adam reproaches her vanity and weakness. Both recognize the loss of divine favor and the enormity of their disobedience. They fear death, they dread divine punishment, and they are overwhelmed by a sense of ruin, not just for themselves, but for all of humanity. Through this tragic arc, Milton explores profound themes. The nature of temptation is central. Satan appeals not through brute force, but by exploiting Eve's curiosity, pride, and reason. The question of free will lies at the heart of the narrative, as both Adam and Eve exercise choice and thus bear responsibility for their fall. The dynamic of love versus obedience is explored in Adam's choice to sin, not out of ambition, but out of a misguided devotion to Eve. Now let's analyze the themes and critical observations expressed in Book 9. Theme of disobedience. Central to Book 9 is the fall, the first act of human disobedience against God, which fulfills the epic subtitle, that is, of man's first disobedience. Next theme, temptation and free will. Satan's successful temptation of Eve showcases how free will, when misused, can lead to moral downfall. Eve is deceived by Satan's persuasive rhetoric, while Adam chooses to fall knowingly out of misguided love. Psychological depth. Milton explores the inner conflicts and vulnerabilities of both Eve and Adam, providing a nuanced portrayal of how pride, curiosity, and affection lead to the fall. Rhetoric and language. Satan's speech is a masterclass in deception and manipulation, demonstrating how language can corrupt and distort truth. The theme of rhetoric as both a tool and a weapon is key. Loss of innocence. The book marks the transformation from innocence to guilt, as Adam and Eve become aware of shame, fear, and a broken harmony after eating the forbidden fruit. Love and loyalty. Adam's decision reflects a tragic form of love, choosing to share Eve's fate rather than obey God. This raises questions about the conflict between divine obedience and human relationships. Gender and hierarchy. Critics often debate Milton's portrayal of gender roles, especially Eve's agency and the implications for patriarchal structure. Tone and imagery shift. Book 9 shifts from the elevated style of earlier books to a darker, more tragic tone, reflecting the moral and cosmic rupture caused by the fall. Theological implications. Milton balances free will and divine foreknowledge, emphasizing that though God knew the fall would occur, he did not cause it. Humans are responsible for their choices. Moral complexity. Rather than portraying good and evil in simple terms, Milton shows the complex moral psychology behind a sin, making Book 9 the emotional and philosophical heart of the epic. Now let's analyze the main quotes from Paradise Lost, Book 9. First one. The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. This quote reflects Satan's psychological state and serves as a profound insight into Milton's conception of free will and inner reality. Satan convinces himself that his internal defiance is enough to sustain him even if he dwells in misery. It underscores the idea that perception and a moral stance originate from within, not from external conditions. Now the next quote. O earth, how like to heaven, if not preferred more justly, seat worthier of gods. Satan utters this in admiration of Eden, comparing its beauty to heaven itself. This moment reveals his lingering capacity for awe and the bitterness that fuels his envy. The irony is thick here. He praises what he plans to destroy, revealing the deep contradictions of evil. Now the next quote. For only in destroying I find ease to my relentless thoughts. Satan admits that destruction is his only solace, showcasing his descent into nihilism and malevolence. It reveals his internal torment and the twisted logic that now governs his choices. This quote deepens his character as not just a tempter, but a figure of existential despair. Now the next quote. Leave not the faithful side that gave thee being, still shades thee and protects. Adam wants Eve not to separate from him, expressing both a care and a caution. He urges her to remain united with him for mutual protection against a potential temptation. The irony is bitter, for his loving warning is ignored, leading directly to the fall. Now the next quote. Thus saying, from her husband's hand her hand soft she withdrew, and like a wood nymph light or a death or dryad. This beautiful poetic image describes Eve as she parts from Adam, casting her in the likeness of mystic nature spirits. The moment is charged with essential grace, innocence, and a foreshadowing. Her gentle withdrawal becomes symbolic of her movement away from divine order. Now the next quote. Her graceful innocence, her every air of gesture or least action overrode his malice. As Satan approaches Eve, he is momentarily awestruck by her beauty and innocence. Yet this admiration quickly curdles into envy and bristles his desire to corrupt her. It highlights how even evil recognizes goodness, but it cannot coexist with it. Now the next quote. So glossed the tempter, and his poem tuned into the heart of Eve, his words made way. Milton describes how Satan's words, filled with a deceptive charm, penetrate Eve's heart. The use of glossed emphasizes the superficial smoothness of his lies. This quote marks the beginning of Eve's psychological seduction, where rhetoric begins to displace reason. Now the next quote. Greedily she engorged without restraint, and I knew not eating death. This line captures the dramatic irony of Eve's action. She consumes the forbidden fruit with eagerness, unaware that she is devouring death itself. Milton contrasts her pleasure with the fatal consequence she is ignorant of. The phrase eating death is a powerful metaphor for self-destruction masked as empowerment. Now the next god. Earth felt the wound, and nature from her seat, sighing through all her box, gave sighs of woe. Nature reacts viscerally to Eve's disobedience, signaling that her sin has cosmic consequences. The earth's sigh represents the disruption of divine harmony and the beginning of decay. Milton emphasizes that human actions reverberate beyond the self into the very fabric of creation. Now the next god. O fairest of creation, last and best of all God's work, creature in whom excelled, whatever can to sight or thought be formed. Adam speaks this in a moment of sorrow and admiration for Eve, emphasizing her beauty and status as God's crowning creation. It reveals the depth of his love and the reason he chooses to fall with her rather than live without her. This tragic idealization highlights the tension between passion and obedience. Now the next god. I also erred in overmuch admiring what seemed in thee so perfect. Adam blames himself for idealizing Eve, suggesting his love blinded him to the importance of divine command. This god underlines the moral error of placing human love above divine obedience. It also reflects Milton's theme of balance between reason and affection. Now the next god. Carnal desire inflaming, he on Eve began to cast lascivious eyes. Following the fall, Adam's perception of Eve is altered. Love gives way to lust. Milton suggests that sin corrupts even the purest affections, turning spiritual love into base desire. This moment signals the loss of innocence and at the beginning of corrupted human relations. Now the next god. Thus they in mutual accusation spent the fruitless hours, but in neither self-contemning. After the fall, Adam and Eve begin to quarrel and blame each other instead of taking individual responsibility. Their unity, once grounded in harmony, breaks into discord and guilt. This line epitomizes the psychological consequences of sin, that is, shame, division, and alienation. Now the next god. For understanding ruled not, and the will heard not her law, both in subjection now to sensual appetite. Milton reflects on the internal disarray after the fall, where reason no longer governs desire. The faculties of will and understanding are overpowered by sensual appetite. This god reinforces the idea that the fall is as much an internal spiritual collapse as an external act. The next god. They hand in hand with the wandering steps and slow, through Eden took their solitary way. This final line of Book 9 is deeply poignant as Adam and Eve walk away together, now burdened with the guilt and loss. Though they are fallen, the unity hints at the possibility of redemption. The slow and wandering steps symbolize their exile, both a literal and a spiritual exile, from the paradise of obedience and innocence.